All right. Let's get to yeah, look, Ethan, he knows he is the gravy now. Let's get to some of the Sean Payton sound. So Sean Payton and, I always like referencing articles that I use for this. NewOrleans.football, Nick Underhill's site. I really liked how he wrote about Payton's press conference where he points out that, look, Sean Payton is very much drawing a line in the sand right now. This is going to be a one-of-a-kind camp this year for the NFL, and nothing about it is going to be easy. I think that people think that it's going to be easier than it is normally. Well, that's not what Sean Payton thinks. And it makes sense, right? No one hates distractions or broken routines more than football coaches. And this entire preseason is one giant distraction and broken routine. So yesterday, Payton hammered home a couple of things. He hammered home the idea of being a professional. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest differences between making that jump from college to the pros. In college, there's always someone over your back holding you accountable if you need it, pushing you, right? You got to eat the right things. You're on a nutrition plan. You got to go to class so you make the grades to be eligible. They're showing up. You got to go to your meetings. You got to go to your workouts, et cetera, et cetera. In the NFL, there's none of that. In the NFL, you're either expected to be a professional or you're out because you may be really good, but there's somebody who is nearly as good as you who will handle things the right way and who will end up making that team. And so Sean Payton really hammered home this idea yesterday, talking about handling your business, personal responsibility, preparation. And he refuses to call it training camp. We played you the soundbite in the open, right? Actually, let's just revisit that. Hey, give me Sean Payton 3, I believe it is here, Musa.
The first thing is I would say we're not in training camp, if you will. There's nothing about this that's like training camp. We're going to approach it differently in that, we're going to have to evaluate, which we always do during the practice sessions. We can create environments which are more like a scrimmage environment in our padded practices. We'll have to do some of that, but this will be entirely different than what a training camp would be like. So I think one of the things is looking at it differently, and we're doing that as we begin to put together our schedule between now and when we open up at home versus Tampa Bay.
As I said earlier, unprecedented times call for unprecedented solutions, right? Creative thinkers, guys who are going to look at a situation and not care how you've always done it. They're going to look to evolve and do something new. Sean Payton's done that consistently offensively in his time. I like that he can now apply that same method of problem solving to trying to navigate a schedule that they will just have never seen before. And he talked about that. What is the schedule for the next 2 weeks?
Well, the week we're in this week is just strictly COVID testing. Next week, after the physicals are taking place over the weekend, next week we move into an acclimation period where they're lifting weights, they're running, they're meeting, and we'll have a series of walkthroughs.
And let's be clear. If anyone thinks that this is going to be easy, it's going to be anything but. So he talked about the next 2 weeks being working out and lifting. This is what the players asked for. Here's another quote from Payton that I'm going to read. Quote, "The specific conditioning test may or may not happen at a later date, but I'm going to tell you, the amount of running and lifting they're going to do is going to be significant." Pause. Anybody who's ever been a part of a team sport, that is not what you want to hear. That's a bad feeling, especially for the big guys. You hear your coach utter that, your stomach drops a little bit. You know you're about to be in the pain cave where you're questioning what you're doing with your life. Okay, let's resume the quote. "The amount of running and lifting they're going to do is going to be significant. Again, this is their schedule. This isn't our schedule. This is the union schedule. This is the management council schedule. This is not the schedule recommended to those parties by our coaches." So it sounds like Payton's a little upset by what the union chose to do, cutting down on padded practice, getting rid of preseason games. Again, I get it. Head coaches hate broken routine, and they hate having limited time to evaluate. This hyper accelerates everything. Now, thankfully, the Saints are in a much better position to handle this than most, but that doesn't mean that they're still going to feel good about it. They like everybody else, they pride themselves on doing their full due diligence in order to get the best 53. And here's what else Payton had to say. Let's go to Sean Payton 1. He was asked about how do you handle camp under these unique circumstances?
Well, I think the first thing is communicating the schedule properly, and then, the ability to handle some of the distractions and not make it so encompassing or so problematic that it can interfere with what we're trying to do relative to football. And so I think the teams that handle that the best, along with the teams that stay healthy, improve their chances.
And that's where you got to feel good again about the Saints. Communication, leadership. It seems like they have all of that locked down. Here's Sean Payton 8. He was asked, look, this has been a shorter offseason. Has that affected how y'all handle install?
Well, we've had shortened off seasons before. I mean, when the players were locked out in 2011, there were no off season. When guys came back in good shape, I expect our players to be in very good shape when we see them. Their physical conditioning and their physical preparation should not have been affected during this. We made a point early on to tell them that we weren't going to, regardless of what happened, we kind of saw ahead of time that there wasn't going to be a chance for mini camp or OTAs. We were able to have meetings like everyone else, but I expect the players to be in outstanding shape. It's their livelihood.
Yeah, it sounds like exactly right. It's their livelihood. That goes back to being a professional. That's what you got to do. You have to be accountable for yourself if you're on this level of football. Finally, let's end here with one that is a bit more football-like. This is not to do with any conceptual stuff about schedule or anything. Look, if you look at last season, Saints drafted Eric McCoy. He did very good at that center position. Now, he did have the second most penalties in the league for a center, but overall he graded very well, and yet still the Saints go this year and they draft Cesar Ruiz. Sean Payton was asked about how he manages to, or how he plans to employ those two high draft picks.
Look, we'll meet on that, visit with them, practice, rotate those guys, move them around. We'll have a plan, and I'm sure by the time we start the regular season, we'll have ironed out some of those question marks, and that's just one of many.
Practice. Yes, AI. We're talking about practice. I mean, practice in this preseason will be more important than it's ever been before. And it's already very important for everybody trying to make the bubble. But it's going to be tough this year. Payton says they're going to scrimmage. They're going to practice harder because they have to make up for that lack of preseason evaluation. No preseason games. They're going to look to make that up on the practice field. So an unprecedented season begins today, begins this week for the NFL and for your New Orleans Saints.